Hey, welcome to another week of Account-Based Friday. And this week we've got a special guest joining us, Dom Colasante from 2X. He's the CEO of 2X. And we're going to be in for a treat here talking about efficiencies and AI. This week Megan has off, but Dom and I are going to kind of handle things from here. And each week, as you know, we start off with a poll. The poll this week is related to the marketing efficiency. And while we don't have a ton of votes here, only 12 votes, the question comes up, where is AI playing the greatest role and greatest possibility right now for you as an organization in your sales and marketing strategy? And the three areas that I listed here, personalized content, which I happen to vote for, is the highest, which, I think there's a huge opportunity here. In fact, we had the CEO of Writer on 2 weeks ago on Account-Based Friday. But surprising to me was that forecasting didn't even register. But again, it's only 12 votes. Tom, I'm curious, what's your perspective on this? Since you've got an organization that somewhat focuses on this as well. But what maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how it relates to this poll.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for having me on. And my background, I've been a CMO in the past for many years in the tech sector, and now I've made the transition to CEO. So it is possible to make that jump from CMO to CEO, and it's exciting. You never stop being a marketer. I find you just become a CMO trapped in a CEO's body, and it's good to see this kind of content being talked about. And not just in sales and marketing, in the boardroom about how these new AI technologies and platforms and applications can be useful. And it's also very interesting to me that sales and revenue forecasting did register, because as a CEO, I think that's something, if you polled CEOs, you get a very different answer than if you polled marketing leaders. But on the personalized content, we at 2X have built a managed services firm, helping companies in the B2B space, execute marketing work. And so we've got, 200 or 300 writers and designers, and about 100 marketing ops people doing MOPS work, and about another 100 doing campaigns work. And so lots of marketers. I guess I run a 600-person marketing department at 2X that's working for our clients, but really it's a team of B2B marketers, and a lot of personalized content excitement going on right now. And I think it's very different in almost the practitioner's view of like marketers doing marketing versus what you kind of read about. There's a lot of discussion around, AI taking jobs away and eliminating work and reducing, the excitement of work. And from my team, what my marketers tell me, what we experience, couldn't be further from the reality. Is that AI has allowed us to eliminate a lot of the redundancy or the redundant type work that we don't love, like atomizing content from one to another format, or writing 100 different variations of ad copy. It can speed that stuff up and allow the marketer instead, one, to do more creative things, to do more personalization, to do more volume of content. And so in the end, it's like this superpower that a marketer inherits when they start to work with AI. And so, and I think the personalization piece is the really critical element, that it's not necessarily about, saving time and writing less content or producing less information. It's about getting more efficient so that you can go deeper and you can be more one-to-one at scale, and you can have more messaging for more segments. And really, as I've always felt, the long pole in the tent on ABM is the content, the messaging, the offers. And so being able to almost like have more capacity to innovate on content, now you have more content, now you can do more personalization, now you can do more ABM, now you can have more results. And so it's about that. It's not necessarily about, well, I could save, 50% of my time writing something.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point about, even your own organization, the 600-person marketing organization, and AI, and maybe just kind of diving down a little bit deeper in that. I guess you see maybe two sides of that coin. One, you see a lot of technologies that marketers are using that maybe your team is using an AI, but maybe like how's your team using AI today in that content creation on behalf of clients? Like, what trends are you seeing there in terms of that usage?
Yeah, it's a couple things. And what's interesting is we've been using generative AI, content AI type solutions for about a year and a half. It's exciting that they're now mainstream, but we were sort of I'll take the credit for doing it before it was cool. And I think what's interesting is the idea came from our writers. It came from our content people that said this thing can help us. And a couple of areas where it could really help. One was a lot of atomization. A lot of our work is related to trying to just put more marketing in market. And so some of that you might have spent all this time on this really great pillar content item that's amazing that your prospects love. Well, how do you get more mileage out of it? How do you turn that into a blog series? How do you turn it into more snackable content? How do you turn it into a teaser that then could drive to the longer item? How do you turn it into an email string with multiple touches of nurture? How do you turn it into other formats? And sort of moving from content that's really, really cool ideas into lots of other variations that are for different audiences or for different channels. AI can be a huge help in sort of like repackaging and resizing some of the content. And so we've used it extensively for that. Obviously, you have the AI helps a human. We don't ever let the AI do the work 100%. So the human becomes more of a prompter, more of an editor, more of a curator. So that use case has been really interesting, and that allows you to just spin out more volume. Second thing I think is interesting is around ad creative. And so we use Jasper AI pretty extensively in 2X, and we also do some work with 6 Sense on their conversational email AI solution. So those are two areas where we're sort of really using content AI. And I think that the advertising creative piece is interesting. Like you can feed a paragraph of ad copy or a paragraph about a pain or a problem or a marketing value prop and be able to spin that into pages and pages and pages of ad creative. And it's interesting because you go through that and there's like some things that you would have probably come up with if you just had time to sit down and write a bunch of ad copy. Then there's some things that you might have never said, like I never would have said it that way or never would have used those words. And it looks interesting, like let's test it. And being able to take, generative produced content and put it in market and let the prospect vote with their clicks and their conversions is a really interesting way to kind of get more variety of ideas. And almost, I think sometimes in the old world, the best copy we create, you have like 4 or 5 writers all kind of taking different angles and different perspectives. And now like with one writer, you have this power of, all this other points of view at their fingertips to enable them. And so we use it for there as well. And the last thing I would say it's really interesting on is around just being able to help writer's block. And I think, writers love to produce stories and content and information. And sometimes you just get stuck like, how do I say this thing? And you just sort of are able to prompt some information and you get lots of different ways to say it, lots of different ways to position it, and sort of moves you through the writing process. And we've seen that by doing that, by almost like using it not actually to produce content, but using it to almost be like a resource to you to kind of help you spark an idea like a thesaurus would or like something else, that can actually speed up the actual production work that you do as a writer. And so we've had some of our writers, be able to, take things that used to take 5 days and do them in 1 day because they're able to move through those gates faster, which in our world means they're going to produce 5 times as much work, which is great for our clients.
Yeah, no, that's a great call out, and love the Jasper example. We've dabbled in Jasper for a little bit as well. It sounds like you've extensively gone into it, and from our perspective, it seems like it automates a lot of the prompts that a Chat GPT 3.5 or 4, like it's got the marketing prompts that are already kind of self-built in and can really be quite effective on search and keywords and unsticking those situations, like you said, of the writer's block. But just, maybe going one step further with that, if you were to think about the tools that marketers, B2B marketers should be using, and, we're talking about Jasper as one common one here. What role does technology play in a B2B marketer's environment right now?
Yeah, I think it's shifted from becoming like a thing that you need to know enough to be dangerous about to something you need to really know. And I look at it that a marketer has this really interesting set of responsibilities. And one, you have to know a lot about marketing. But 2, you also have to know a lot about leadership and managing people and being a great judge of talent and a great inspirational leader because you're job in marketing is often to manage an organization and manage lots of creative, innovative people to their fullest potential. So you have to be a good marketer. You have to be a good talent leader. You also, as a marketer, have to really understand budget, metrics, financial literacy. You have to understand how to work with a CFO and how to work with an organization to say, what are the kind of investments we're going to make, and what investments might be more palatable based on if you have private equity money, or you're in a high growth phase, or you're in an EBITDA maximization window, and you have to know that. And then you also have to know the technology. You have to know what it does, and you have to know what the categories of technology are, and you have to know what Sixth Sense can do when it comes to predictive analytics, when it comes to conversational email, when it comes to sales intelligence, when it comes to ABX. You have to know what Marketo can do when it comes to smart campaigns and innovative ways of scoring and segmentation. And you need to really be a subject matter expert in order to figure out how to put these things together to organize a better result in marketing. And it's the job's changed a lot. I think in the beginning you just had to be really creative. You had to be really thoughtful around how do I get after this market? And I think, from the CMO to the VP level on down, I mean, you have to almost be a technologist today, because really, as we're operating in this new environment, I was having a conversation yesterday with the CEO of Twilio. We were talking about what's more important today, great messaging or great segmentation. And my view on it was great segmentation with okay messaging will win every day over amazing messaging with poor segmentation. And so the science, the tech, the data, the analytics, the plumbing of marketing, the MOPS work that sort of often gets left to the technologists. I mean, that has to be a core competency of a marketer to operate in a world where the buyer wants to be anonymous, the buyer wants to be, on the digital journey on their own. They don't want to tell you who they are. They don't want to fill out their form and give you an email address or a phone number. And you've got to know how to market to that person, how to get to them, and how to use technology to do that. And that has to almost be your superpower to be an effective marketing leader. And just make one other comment. I think that being able to do that is sometimes a pretty big chasm for marketers, particularly ones that have been doing marketing a long time and have come from the Marcom space or the event space, the field marketing space. And I think that's where it really is important to rely on experts around you. Surround yourself with people that are really smart on that, and they can make you smart on that, and then be able to really guide the organization into what's possible based on some experts kind of propping you up and helping you understand what's really out there in the technology space.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point about the technology and how it almost seems like marketers, as I'm hearing you describe it, they're almost like the decathletes now. You got to be good at 10 different things, including the technology. In fact, I think that's how we originally met, through our common partner, Sixth Sense. And you really have to understand what it's capable of doing at all levels, at a senior level as well as at a junior level. The challenge that we see in the market right now is there's just not enough resource to go around to really get good at these tools, because there's so many tools, there's so many initiatives, and at the same time we're being told do more with less. How do you kind of reconcile those two, of the get good at technology, the technology's changing, but do more with less? What's the right scenario there to think through?
Yeah. Yes. First of all, we think that problem needs a name. And so we call it the marketing resource paradox. If you have resources, whether resources are people, money, skills, time, capacity, resources create impact. That's why we're all here as marketers. That's why we generate an impact. Could be revenue, ideally, could be pipeline, could be engagement in a new market, could be some type of brand movement. But resources are needed for impact. But you never really have enough resources. So you're always constrained on the resource front, and you're trying to generate impact with less resources than you need. But we're also in a position where not enough impact right now. Every CRO, every CEO would say, I wish marketing produced more value, produced more contribution. And so you kind of need more impact, but you have not enough resources. But now you're actually being asked to have less resources, layoffs, budget cuts, constraints. So you have to find a way to get more impact with less resources, but you need resources to create impact. You need impact to fund the resources. so that you have the budget to do more things. And you have sort of like this impossible problem of you don't have enough pieces on the board to deliver the result that you have to get to. And that marketing resource paradox issue, one, I don't think is being talked about as sort of like a really difficult, like a somewhat unsolvable problem that needs a solution. I think one, it's important as marketers we realize that like every CMO, every one of us is struggling with that same problem, and we've got to think differently, outside the box, transformationally in order to solve it. We're not just going to solve it by working harder. We're not just going to solve it by buying more technology. We've done that already. We've already bought the best tech stacks in the world. So how do we get at it? And I think how do we really get to the do more with less reality, which I think is possible. You can solve that. I think it really comes down to the point you made about, there's not enough skills in the market. But really that drives into, I think the organizational model needs to change, needs to transform. I think lots of marketers are running the same org chart they've had for the last 10, 15 years that Serious Decisions told us we should do. And then Forrester carried the torch on even more. And you've got your departments and you've got your marketers that are doing the work and you have individual contributors. And I think that model is ripe for a complete reimagining. And what's great is in this moment, we're all reconfiguring our org models. We're all thinking about what roles are around. Lots of organizations are going through restructuring. And so that's a moment to kind of reimagine what it could be. I think a better model is one, to figure out what you need to become the best in the world at, and then you go do that. And then figure out where you need to acquire or buy or be a consumer of best in the world expertise. But you don't necessarily need to own, build, and have that expertise. And in a lot of that, I think there's a lot of execution motions in marketing. Take marketing ops, take tech specific skills on an individual tech platform. Take the ability to use AI and generate content, campaign execution methodologies. Those kinds of things are things where you don't necessarily need to become the unique best in the world. You just need to use the best practice. You need to be operating in a way that is at a high level of performance. And maybe it's someone else's job to be the best in the world at that, like a marketing service partner or a marketing as a service company that can actually bring those resources in for you. And so one, I think it's about thinking about, it's about getting to what must be insourced and then what could be consumed from the outside. The second piece is, how do you get the economic model, and the one that makes a lot of sense? And the reality is we're in a global world right now. There is global talent out there that really understands B2B marketing, that really understands tools like 6 Sense and Marketo and HubSpot and Mambora and Drift and all these new platforms, certified people out there that happen to work in locations that have a completely different economic profile than most marketing departments that are US-based with onshore in-house resources. And when you're able to sort of tap global labor and you're able to think about, can I consume talent from other places in the world that might actually be better than the talent I have, more experienced, more certified, more adept at managing these kind of new workflows and processes, and might also be 70% less the run rate cost of a US-based resource. Well, now I could think about how I might configure things differently, like where I might lean on something that could be a little more flexible or almost like the cloud model applied to labor. And so being able to kind of bring in that talent from other markets that can provide some of that run and execution capacity so that you can really do the things that only you can do, like product marketing, I think is something that you need to be the best in the world at. Like parts of customer marketing where you're interfacing with your most important stakeholder group. Parts of, field marketing where you're connecting directly to the field and driving sales and marketing alignment. Like those are things that you need to become really, really good at, and they might be very unique to your business and your organization. But how to run Marketo? No, I just want to bring in someone amazing for that. And if I can find someone on the other side of the world that's 70% less, that's competent, qualified, available, well, that might allow me to really pull down the cost of my organization, which is where 50 to 60% of our budget sits, that really hasn't been innovated upon other than hire a lot of people, lay off a lot of people, this sort of whiplash we keep going through. Maybe I can find a way to get that talent another way, and then almost like off-rent myself from having to be the HR manager, the talent manager, the person to hire, recruit, mentor. Let a vendor do that, and I'll consume the outcome instead. And that concept of sort of operating model transformation, of thinking differently about the org chart, of insourcing and outsourcing, I think is a newer concept for B2B marketing. I think it's just coming of age. I think in lots of other functions, IT, finance, HR, manufacturing, procurement, they've already adopted that hybrid organization approach. And so I think we're learning that it can work really well for B2B marketing. And there's some really interesting companies out there doing that. And I think that perhaps the current conditions have showed us, one, that digital work is very productive. We found that you can be a very effective marketer if you're in your home, if you're working remotely, if you're in a hybrid type structure. And so that ability to work anywhere, I think often opens this opportunity to some levers that B2B marketers haven't pulled in the past.
Yeah, you bring up several great points in there. And just going off the last thing that you were saying about the IT world, they have been through this before. They've been through the offshoring a decade ago, 2 decades ago, and now we're at a different point of maturity of that offshore model, I would imagine. Like we've got a lot of lessons learned on how to do that offshoring effectively. Maybe earlier on there were some challenges, but now with technology the way it's developed, it's become a lot less challenging, I would imagine, to do that offshoring. I guess my question would be, do you see certain types of companies more readily willing to adopt that model, either size or industry, versus, say, other types of companies that may not be mentally ready for that B2B marketing movement?
Yeah, I mean, companies that have experience with some type of global operations tend to be more ready to consider using a global delivery model for marketing. What's good news is lots of companies have experience with global operations and have sales in different markets and have, maybe a software development center in a different market, or have, customer service and support in other markets. And so it's almost not abnormal to run into even small organizations that are using resources all over the world. And so I think a little bit of it, organizational maturity of, how do I work with a resource that might not be in my physical headquarters, is something that kind of teaches you a bit of like, how do I contract with outside providers to be able to get into my systems and data? How do I think about how to manage and lead and work with people that you might have never met in person? I think some of those skills exist in companies that have had a little bit of global experience, but I think almost every business has some element of that. And so almost that barrier isn't so scary and different because it's sort of part of our DNA already. I mean, we're already working with people all over the world. I think the other thing is critical is what you said about IT. And in the many iterations of the IT managed services item, where most IT departments now are most predominantly outsourced, I think it shifted in a couple of phases. Was maybe first phase might have been all about cost, might have been all about labor arbitrage, shifting work to a low-cost geo. I think the second phase became all about impact, value, speed, skill sets, technology adoption, innovation. And I think the current wave of IT is really about getting both together. And what's great is marketing kind of coming as a later entrant to the outsourcing offshore global delivery model is sort of building right on top of where IT sort of has gotten to. So the marketing world, it's not about cost as a single reason to do it. No one wants lower quality, cheaper marketing. That's not a reality that any CMO would accept, or any CEO, or any really CFO really get to them. Like, hey, if I can cut my budget in half, but I minimize the value of our brand, and no CFO would really want you to do that. And so I think it's getting to the point where the newer model of B2B marketing outsourcing benefits from all the learnings of the past, and really has been set up in a way that, one, it's significant cost reduction, but it's with significant improvement in impact, value, and expertise. And having both of those things together is a mandatory structure, and that exists. There are companies where you can get, in our company, for example, we have about 70 Sixth Sense certified marketers. There's only about 700 certified Sixth Sense marketers in the US, based on our count. So there's a huge amount of accessible, available talent that has expertise that might even be better than you have in your organization, that knows how to use all those different pieces, and happens to come on a cost model that's less. And so levers like that are really how you do more with less. And do more is intentionally the first part of that phrase. Like number one thing that marketers really want to do and CEOs and CFOs want is, how do I get more value impact? How do I better use the technology I invested in? How do I put more campaigns in market? How do I create a better customer experience? How do I do something more interesting, engaging? That's my number one objective. But then how do I do that in a way that actually happens to cost me less in the end, so I could have a budget give back, a more effective, efficient model that causes me to run at a lower rate? I think the only real way to do that outside of the technology investments we've already made, like marketing automation, which we're really attacking that problem, those investments have already been made and they've kind of already got us to a more efficient cost profile. The only way to do more with less, in my view, is to really transform the organization and consider those offshore and outsourced elements.
Yeah, and I think you really nailed it. Even two questions ago about the kind of elevating the strategic value of the U.S. or the local resources. They can become more strategic, whether it be focused on product marketing, as you suggested, or being really tied into higher value add contributions to the revenue, and maybe offshoring or outsourcing the lower value add kind of really brings the organization up a notch or two in terms of their go-to-market strategy. I guess as we're winding down here, and last question, we only got about 3 minutes left here, but how any advice that you would give companies that are about to embark on this strategy, whether they go through you, they do it on their own, like what should they be thinking about as somebody outsources for the very first time, or maybe they're doing it and they're not getting the results? Like what kind of advice would you give there?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I'd give two thoughts. One would be, first one would be, recognize that you're in a moment of transformation anyway. I mean, you're already going through a restructuring of your organization, likely, if you're in the B2B tech space. Come out of that restructuring with a better, more adaptable, flexible, higher octane model. Don't just do what lots of organizations have to do, which is I'll turn off my ad budget and I'll lay off 20% of my org. That doesn't put the organization in a better spot in the future. Use this window when people are kind of open to changing and expecting some kind of change to happen, or you're even publicly announcing change to happen. Use it to really do something different and innovative, because you don't get these windows often, and I think it's a window when people are open to thinking differently. That's one. Number two, it's not about removing people from your organization and shifting them to another place. I think it's about unlocking the potential of the people that you have. Most people in the marketing org became marketers because they wanted to do strategic, innovative stuff. No one went to marketing school so they could write email nurture strings. They went there so they can figure out how to activate a market, how they could, position an offer to this unique audience and then get them engaged. That kind of strategic thinking around how to activate a market is what your marketers all actually want to do. And so by pulling some of the doer work, the tactical work, the individual contributor work, the execution work off of them, one, you get them to think more strategically, which would make them happier and actually make the organization better. But two, by actually pushing that execution work off to someone that wants to do that is like focused on that has built their career around execution work and wants to be an execution expert, actually will improve the quality of execution as well. And so sort of it drives benefits on both sides. It's sort of a win-win all around. And I think using this moment to think about how do I create a bigger, better, more is my best advice as you think about transforming the operating model.
Awesome advice, Dom. Grateful that you can invest the time here, and thank you for all of that. There was so much to unpack. We may have to have you come back for another 30 minutes because there is really so much value in kind of how you're thinking about that model. It's really transformational, but if not now, when? In terms of timing to look at it because of AI and everything that's going on right now and kind of the unique pressures that we're all under from an outsourcing perspective. So thank you for investing the time.
Thanks for having me, John.
Awesome. And next week, we've got Dr. Cindy, who is a brand expert. She's going to be sharing her book, Sell Yourself. And we're going to be talking a lot about personal branding. A lot of us do that on LinkedIn. How can we improve? What can we be doing differently? She's going to have some advice on that. So thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next week, same time.